Yes, mate. That's filthy. Hey guys, it's Will from EDM Tips. Today I'm going to show you how to make trance music in the style of Armin van Buuren. I'm actually going to do a Tiësto remix in that style as well. And if you're wondering what's happened to my eye, I got bitten by a mosquito and that's why I look a bit like Anne Robinson from The Weakest Link. So in this tutorial we're going to be going into everything from creating the melodic and harmonic content first. And that's because we want to have two sections to our track, the melodic break section and then that really pounding driving bass on the drop. I'm making a video on this because you guys asked for it in the poll last week on YouTube, and if you haven't left your vote yet, I've left another one, so let me know what you want me to cover on this channel by getting your voice heard. As usual, you can download this project file, all the samples completely free, and I just want to give a quick shout out to our accelerator student Soundpour, who's released an awesome track that you can hear now, and I've linked to it below this video. Okay, without further ado, let's hop into the door and get it done. Okay, so the first thing to do when writing a trance track usually will be getting your melodic and harmonic content nailed down exactly how you want. So we are going to work out our chords, harmonies and melodies just using a basic piano sound. So let's just drag that in, set the tempo of our project, which is going to be 134 BPM, and then open up our piano roll editor with a MIDI clip. Now, if you're using Ableton and most DAWs nowadays, you can actually choose the scale you want to work in, and that just makes it really easy so you're not getting confused about which notes to hit. So I'm going to choose the scale of C minor natural, and you can either play the keys if you've got a keyboard, but if you can't do that, if you use this technique, you can just press scale and it shows only the notes from within that scale. It makes things super easy. And the easiest way to do it is to work out the bass notes first. So if we're using this template technique, I'm just going to press scale. Then all of these notes showing are just within the key of C minor natural. So let's just work out the bass notes. And let's just double those up. And we're going to make it a slight change to the second time it runs through. Just keep the interest alive. And now we can consolidate those together and work out the notes above them in the chords. You can either do that or you could work out the melody, whatever's easiest for you. Once you've got the bass notes, you could draw in the melody above it, or again, you could play it in with your MIDI keyboard. I quite like that. So let's just program that in. And now we've got our melody and we've got our bass line. So now we can work out the chords. You can either do this in a completely separate MIDI clip if you like, but I'm just going to keep everything within one MIDI clip to make things a bit clearer. So I'll take these bass notes, I'm going to duplicate them, and I'm going to drop them down an octave. And then I'm going to take the ones I initially wrote and move them up an octave. And these are the ones that we're going to base our chords on. And you can check the video that's popped up here from last week and you can see how to make really cool chords really quickly. But let's just build these up from scratch as well. So I'm just skipping a note each time whilst I've got this scale selection, this scale mode selected. But I might actually change the quality of this last chord by moving up this third one semitone, which will make it a major chord. And that note is outside of the key of C minor natural, so that's called a borrowed chord. That's nice, that's really epic, I like that a lot. And if this is a trance track, we need to name this bad boy, don't we? So what I'm going to call it is Trance. Okay, what I'm going to call it is Trance. Trance would be a fine thing. I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I've had a word with myself. Things are settled down. Let's continue. So now we have got to add these seventh chords. I'm actually going to get rid of the melody. I'm going to copy it, I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to just put this on another track, which we're going to use for the synth melody in a different instrument, and that's just going to help keep things a bit separated. So let's just paste that. But if you get your melodic content for a trance track sounding really good before you're using any fancy sounds, you're just using a piano, and it sounds great, then when you get those sounds in, it's going to sound amazing. So the most important thing is getting that melodic content correct. Okay, next thing we are going to do on our magic list is, well, we could put the kick in, but I actually want to get these sounds sounding pretty good first. So for the melody, I am actually going to keep it as a piano, but I'm going to process it differently from this sound, which is going to end up being, I think, using synths. So let's just choose another piano. And what I'm going to do is duplicate that melody. I'm going to put it up an octave to make it sound even more epic and trance-like. And if we create an auxiliary channel, whichever DAW you're using, doesn't matter, just go up to Create and then Insert Return Track. That's what they're called in Ableton, but it's still an auxiliary channel. And we just want to put a really nice hall reverb on there, 100% wet, so the dry signal isn't being doubled up, and then a nice long decay time, and just make sure the low end is rolled off. Now let's create some really cool saw wave for this saw synth. So I'm just going to drag in the wavetable. You could use Serum for this, or you could use Vital, doesn't really matter. The important thing is just to have a synth where you know how to control it, really. So let's create a saw wave and turn it down again. We just don't want things clipping on the master channel. Okay, that sounds good. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take out the bass notes because we're going to have our own separate bass to control this. So let's just keep those frequencies a bit higher. So now let's make this nice and thick and wide by using unison. Make sure there's no release because we want it to turn off straight away. So this is going to be like the epic break. So both together. Okay, cool. So now let's get the beat in, but this is going to be the break of the track. And the reason why we want to get the melodic and harmonic structure done right first is because when we go to the drop, which is just going to be holding the root note of the track, now we know what that root note should be. We know what the chords are going to be doing, so we know what's going to end up leading into. And as this note is in the, or as this track, sorry, is in the key of C minor natural, we know that the bass line is going to be hitting that C. So we could leave the melody on. Let's just get rid of this piano and then just write a note on the C. So that's going to be pretty much what the drop is doing, but obviously with the different basses interplaying with each other. So let's change this to be called saw. Call that saw. Now, as this is a synth, we know we need to color it cyan because that's the natural color of synths. I learned that from David Attenborough. Cyber David Attenborough from the future. So now we are going to create this really cool interplaying bass line where you've got 3 or 4 different basses. So knowing that that's what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create those channels straight away. Call it bass, bass 2, bass 3, and bass 4, and color them all yellow. And now because we know they're all going to be basses, we can group them together as well. And then we've just got one control for all of our bass sounds, which is going to make things much easier. So in terms of the bass, I'm going to actually create a couple of different basses, and then I'm going to use a couple of different synths as well. So first, let's just save this. I want to get a kick drum in there as soon as possible because that's going to help tell me what the bass line should be doing, interplaying with the kick. So I've programmed a kick every beat. And for this, we're going to turn off the melody and we're just going to work on creating this bass line that interplays with the kick drum, which is going to be super important. So I'm going to start with just a saw wave, again, in the wavetable, but it doesn't matter which synth you use. And let's just turn this down so it's not going to be too loud. And remember, we're using C because that's the root note of the track. So let's just create a nice chunky sound. Just a saw wave. So what I'm going to do is actually just draw in a basic bass line of what I want the rhythm of the bass to be doing, and then we're going to split out that rhythm into the different instruments, the different bass instruments. That's the easiest way to approach this kind of bass line. And I'm just working on the 16ths here. You can see my grid is set to 16ths, and that's where all the action happens. That's where all the groove happens. So let's see what we can come up with. So this is going to be the groove. Cool. So now we can split out this rhythm onto our different sounds. We're going to keep this one in this sound. Let's just... And then these other ones are what we're going to break out. So let's create a couple of different bass synths. I'm going to actually use Serum and a couple of presets just to work quickly. It's a great way to make this kind of bass line is to search through presets once you programmed in the bass notes, and then just settle on the ones that seem to gel really well with the rest of your sounds. So now you can see we can actually break out these and just put them onto different tracks. So let's put this one here. We can delete it from this. And then we want to be using the same bass note so it creates a pattern that repeats so that people can lock into that groove. And then for this one, we can put this down here. So now we've got 3 different bass sounds or 3 different bass tracks. We can just loop this until we've chosen some sounds that we think sound really good. Let's loop, put them both to -6 so they're not too loud as well. And the other thing I want to do, which I forgot to mention, is actually create a sub bass line, which is going to hit the bass for all of them. In fact, no, we don't need to do that yet. Yeah, let's do that. Let's create a sub bass line. So I'm going to put them all on the same octave and just choose a sine wave, which is going to make things nice and smooth and fat in the low end. So if we put operator, doesn't matter which synth you use, again, the important thing is not to have much release. Choose a sine wave, and then this is going to be creating that sub bass power. Let's turn off the other basses and have a listen. So all that sub bass is going to be coming from this operator, but we've got a bit of a click happening, which often happens with sine waves in a low octave. So I'm just going to put a high EQ and get rid of it. So lots of power there from the low end, which means with the other basses, we can actually filter out the low end, but we don't need to worry about that yet. Let's choose the bass sounds first. So we're going to create our own bass sound with this first one. I want to make it really wide. And instead of just adding unison, which can introduce phasing issues in the bass line, I'm going to group it. I'm going to duplicate that chain. I'm going to pan one left and I'm going to pan one right. And I'm actually going to have one in the center as well, but we're going to work on that in a couple of seconds. First, let's work on these two. So we've got one pan left and one right. At the moment, they're exactly the same, so you won't hear any stereo width. But now, if we warp one of them, just make it slightly different. Perhaps warp it a bit too. Check it in mono, and on the master channel I've got this utility with the keyboard shortcuts turn on mono, so I can check there aren't phase issues. Okay, that sounds a bit weird. It loses that power.
Okay, that keeps the power, but it still sounds good in stereo. So that's what I'm going to go with. And then for this last one, this is going to be a noise layer. So I'm just going to choose a white noise oscillator. And we're just going to layer a little bit over this of the top to give it some extra crunch in the middle. So that's a pretty fat sounding bass line now. Now for the other ones, I'm just going to, as I said, search through some presets in Serum. So let's go to some of my ones. Sounds pretty cool. It's like a neuro bass. I might make it a bit longer so you can hear it warp like that. Yep, that sounds pretty cool. And then for the last one, let's choose another sound. I'm going to have another search through my presets. Let's go for FM house bass. That's cool because it's like a pulse, like a heartbeat. I'm just going to take the release off because I want it to be a bit more sharp. Maybe this needs to be an octave up. So I can actually group these basses together and call it mid bass. This is getting a bit complex now, but bear with me. There's a reason for this. It's because I want this to have all of these basses to have the low end taken out because our sub bass is doing the job of this, of the low end. So we've got this one doing the low end, and then we've got these ones creating the interesting. That's cool. I'll keep it lower octave, I think. So now we want this to be jamming with the kick. Very important. So let's get a compressor, put that on the entire bass channel, open up this little button here, choose sidechain input, and you can take it from the kick, but I prefer to have a separate sidechain channel, which is up here. And the difference between this is I've got a very short, sharp rim shot. And if I open up my routing, you can see it's set to sends only. And that means the only thing it's going to be used for is triggering the sidechain compressor. So now let's get this attack and release settings right and get that bass really pumping. And you can just tweak the ratio. I don't really like this middle bass sound much. Let's take it down an octave. Now, to add a little bit more interest to this bass line as well, what I'm going to do is I've created this auxiliary channel with another reverb on it. And what I'm going to do is just automate this bass 3 to have reverb on it. Just at the end of every little phrase, perhaps this would sound good. Just for that one note. I think I'll do it for the first one instead. And then what that's doing is just sending that bass to the reverb channel just for that one note. And I'm going to add a separate pump compressor on there just to get that pumping along with it too. So now we can create the rest of the drums, and we could tweak this bass. You know, it's probably a good idea to have, spend more time picking bass sounds that work really well. Let's see if we can pick another one actually. Yeah, I don't really like this middle one. I think this one's a bit weak. So I'm going to just search for some other ones. Let's go to this Julian Jordan pack, see if he's got any good ones. That's pretty cool. And I'm going to just choose one more bass sound, and I'm going to use a sample for this and show you another little trick. I'm getting a bit carried away here, guys, going a bit more in depth than I usually do, but hope you're enjoying it. Let me know if you are in the comments below, and do let me know which artists you want me to cover on this channel, what styles as well. I read all the comments, and the ones that get most voted for are the ones I'm going to do. So next week, I think I've already got a tech house one lined up because you guys voted on the poll that I've linked to below. But go and vote on the poll if you haven't already, because I'll make some decisions based on that as well. Anyway, let's just get a sound. I want something with a bit of a envelope, like a meow, like a shape to it. These are all very sustained. Like that. So now I'm going to put this here and I'm going to reverse it. And we can see it's sampled at C, which is perfect. That's the note we want, because that's the roots of our track. I'm just going to tighten it up, make sure it's not fighting with anything else. And now you've got this really cool reverse bass sound. And a little bit of a gap. So now there's a real groove going there. I'm loving that actually. Let's just call it reverse bass. And then crack on to the next thing. What's on my magic list? Okay, next thing are the drums. So you can see now we can switch easily between these two sections of the track. And that's the main thing we need to get here. So we could put the melody on and it's going to work with our bass line because it's all in the key of the same track. But the chords will also work with our melody for that exact same reason. And now we can go to the chords. And then you have your build up and everything else comes in. And then at the end of the drop, you can go right back to the bass. So we will do the drums in a sec, but I'm actually going to show you what you can have as a third option when it comes to writing trance. So you might have your chords in the break. Well, you definitely would. And then you can drop back to that single root note of the track. But you could also, you know, the third option is have the, after the second or the third drop, have the bass notes actually follow the chords of the track as well. Now, this is where it gets kind of a bit messier because then you have to go through and change all the notes here, which is, again, another reason why working out this stuff before you actually produce the rest is important. So I'm just going to give you an example of how that might sound. So if we go to our bass notes, our sub bass, and just have this one selected for the time being with the chords, we're just going to make it follow the chords now. So we can go to the chords, see what the bass notes are. C, A flat, F. So you've got C. Let's just choose the same scale so we can see the same names. A flat, and then F. And now all you have to do is make sure these other bass notes are following the exact same pattern. And as I say, it's a bit time consuming because of course they're all on different instruments, but let's do it anyway and see how it sounds. So now we've made the bass notes follow the chords, our last drop could actually be more like this. But I actually prefer it just going back to the kind of root note of the track. So let's stick with that. And then the next thing we need to do is create the drums. So I'm going to do this using the EDM Tips Creative Toolkit, which you can grab below this video. And then I'm going to also add in a loop just to give more energy, more interest to the track. So let's go to snares. That's quite an interesting sound, an interesting tone to it. Let's use that one. Just take it down in volume and program it on every other kick. I think it needs to be layered with something. Let's layer it with a clap. That sounds quite cool. I think that would work well. Just to add a bit more snap to it. So the next thing we can do harmonically is actually introduce these pads whilst the root note is playing just on the bass. And the way that we can do that is just have the first note playing like so, and just have it sustained. So I'm going to just sustain that first note. I think I'll add a ninth to that chord as well to make it even sound nicer. And if you want to learn about sevenths and ninths, you can click the video that I linked to earlier. So let's just get the same pump compressor, the sidechain compressor on that saw synth, because it's a bit over the top. And now let's add some hats into these drums. So what I'm going to do is, again, from the EDM Tips Creative Toolkit, let's just get a closed hat and an open hat. Or maybe a ride cymbal. That's kind of cool. Let's try that. So I'm going to first program the closed hats in. Just on every 16th. Whoops. Except I'm going to take the first one down so the kick's got more space. And I just change the volume of the other ones by dragging down the velocity. And that just adds more movement to it because each one is a slightly different volume. So let's just copy those across. And let's add this ride cymbal as well. So I'll just go classic, make sure release is down, sustain is full, and that's so that whenever the MIDI note is off, it just stops straight away. There's no run on, which keeps your drums really snappy, really tight, and drums are one of the things that will date your track faster than any other element if they sound old school, they're not fresh and they're not tight enough. And let's layer that with an open hat. A nice crunchy one. Again, we're going to turn it so that the release is down to 0. Just make this a bit quieter. This is just going to augment that ride cymbal we've already put in. now to augment these drums with a loop, which is just going to add another layer of detail to our drums and just make it sound way better. So I'm going to go and just preview some as I'm listening to the track. So the way to do that is just play the track and then preview them if you've got Ableton, and they'll automatically be synced, which is really nice. That's quite cool. And I make a note of them on my magic list, and I find 5 or 6 I like, and then just compare them A/B against each other until I find the best one. And if it's really loud, you can use this little Q control here to turn it down and up. I think this one's cool because it adds quite a nice big clap sound. So let's just keep that for the time being. Turn it down. Mix it in. Drum loop. Okay, so now we have our melody, and let's just have the bass line. So this is what would happen on the drop. It would probably be something like this. And remember, this is before any mixing, so getting the sounds right at the beginning is super important. The next thing I want to do is add a, I think I'm going to add a vocal actually. Now you could look on Splice or Loop Cloud for a vocal, but I'm actually going to use a cheeky vocal that I probably shouldn't be doing because it's been such a popular remix contest lately. I'm actually going to drop in the vocals of Motto by Tiësto. And let's just see how it goes with this track. It's all synced up. So let's start things off. And it will be something like this. That sounds pretty cool. Let's bring in the synth. Oh, let's do a bit of arrangement now. That's going to be opening up. Now the chords come in. Yes. That's cool. Because it's all in the same key. It works. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to muck about with this now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a build, and then we're going to drop back in to just that. Let's add a little bit of echo on there, and it's going to kind of delay nicely. So auxiliary channel, once again, 100% wet, and it's all about getting the right delay speed for what you're wanting to do. I'm going to add some ping pong delay, add lots of feedback so it keeps going for a long time, and let's just try and add some of that on D. Here we go. Okay, that is cool. So this will be the bill. No, don't know what's going on there. Let's just take this one here and put it here instead. And let's create a riser. I'm not going to create a riser because I've done it on the last video, which you can click there and see that. But I'm just going to, oh no, I will really quickly, just a really simple one. I'm going to do that in Serum. So let's just create a riser. Saw wave, brilliant. Let's get some reverb on the go because we want to push this riser right back in the mix. Plus 12, minus 12. Come on, minus 12. There we go. And now we can create a riser just with a pitch bend. So if we choose the root of the track, which is the C, just do an extended one, C, and then we just need to program in the pitch bend. So we choose MIDI control, pitch bend, and then basically go from the lowest possible to the highest possible. And then you'd have the claps and the risers and the white noise. And then the drop. Let's just get it in the right place. There we go. So it'll be, yeah, we'll be doing that. Cool. So let's just. And that's where you have the snare riser, snare roll. What are you doing? Like that. You probably extend this a bit longer. That's pretty cool. Okay, let's just do a little extra bit. Then we're going to get the claps coming in. I'm actually going to take the claps from the loop as well, but just the claps for this bit because I really like how they sound. Because they're a little bit off, like just off the transient, which gives it a human feel. And then we just fade it out. So that would work really well with the clap we programmed in, but we need to take out those hats. That's cool. So let's just copy and paste that. You know, I mean, there's a lot more to do on this, guys, but I just kind of got carried away. So you've got the chordal and melodic content for the breaks. Then you've got the root note for the track. You've got the different basses bouncing around and working with each other and dancing around the kick. And then I've just chucked on some vocals. They're not really right for the vibe of this track, but actually I think they work really well on the drop. So let's just have a listen to what we've done so far and call it a day. So we won't take the melody in there. We might just have it happen here, so it's a bit more epic. And let's program in some automation on that source saw wave. I probably wouldn't have the vocals coming until the break. No. Don't like that bit. Probably this bit there. I'd layer this, make it bigger. Bass drop. Oh, I don't even need to show you. I can literally just sing music production at you. Like this. Riser, come on, rise above it and get the drop. Yes, mate. That's filthy. It's probably feedback too loud now. Wrong drum sound though. So, you know, at that point, I'd probably actually switch out the original snare sounds. Like, getting the right sounds is so important, guys, before you do any of the mixing. Yeah, so I really hope you've enjoyed that. I don't know where I was going with it, but thank you for joining me once again. Don't forget you can download this project file, all the samples, completely free. Not the vocal, obviously, because it's Tiësto's. And what's her name? Can't remember. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this. It really helps me out. And like this video, share it with your friends. Until next time, thanks for watching, cheers, and happy producing.